So what's in the way? Why aren't we all having a light and right experience?
Conditioning. We're supposed to do this.
Condition. He said conditioning. We're supposed to do this. Obligation. Well, that's an O word that doesn't fit in that. Obligation. I'm supposed to do this. Duty. Honor. Loyalty. Have you guys heard all these things? Obey. Guilt. Shame. So what's in the way of this is all the stuff stuck in here. This is your problem. And yes, this will make you remember it so you won't forget it. Why do I use all these hand clues? Because they really work. We want to have a light and right experience. We want to have this kind of experience, but we can't because we're having this kind of experience. Our functioning, our subconscious mind is still filled with faulty programming. Programs that you haven't recalled, programs that you haven't transfigured is the word I like to use. Why do I use transfigured? Because your consciousness does not have delete button. Have you tried to forget things? Does it work? How many of you have been with some counselor somewhere and they said, write it all down and then light it on fire? No. Huh?
So they laugh because they know it's true.
Oh, yeah, right. How many people in here have done that? I heard quite a few laughs. Or they say, put it in the freezer and freeze those thoughts. It's silly. Okay, you guys, there's a lot of New Age people doing some really kooky shit. I call them false prophets. There's a lot of people doing some kooky stuff, and that includes mainstream counseling. I have my master's in counseling psychology. I know what they're teaching, and it doesn't work. Because they're trying to mask over things and they don't understand the truth of what's really sourcing what their issues are. And so I don't think you can hit a delete button. I'm pretty sure if you gave your computer to the FBI, do you think they can find anything you've ever done on that computer? Okay, do you think the same is true for you? I don't care how well you think you've pushed it and suppressed it and depressed it. Is it still there? Is it still causing issues? It may mutate cells. It may do all kinds of stuff because you're not paying attention to code that constantly keeps coming up. And you're like, no, don't want to feel that. No, I'll have alcohol instead. No, I'd rather masturbate. Oh, no. You see what I'm saying? So it's time that you start listening to these little wily codes that keep coming up and stop suppressing them. When you have sexual fantasies that you don't want to share with anybody in the whole wide world, come share them with me because I'll tell you what they're linked to in your childhood that has nothing to do with sex. Because everything that gets caught in the subconscious mind is going to have a way to talk to you. And sometimes it's through your private little fantasies you wouldn't tell a soul. And you need to fully reveal those, if not to anybody, but maybe just me, so we can figure out what it's trying to tell you. Does that make sense? It's just biofeedback. And there's nothing shameful about it. It's just going to be insightful when you decide you can share those things. Does that make sense? Okay. So our subconscious mind has two places. I've already told you about it. We have our synapses. These are the agreements that we make, and it's all the webs, those webs that we weave in our mind, and that's where your beliefs are. But let me teach you a little bit about beliefs. I want a pen. Okay. So the lowest, remember the upside down cross a second ago on our sheets? The lowest form of willing something into being, thought plus feeling, is hope, right? Doesn't it make sense that somebody that's feeling very obey, they want hope? And then the next stage up for the upper cross, when people are finally rebelling against that and want something different and they decide they want or desire and they want something better, they move into this. Now, a lot of you have a lot of beliefs, but beliefs are lesser than faith. Beliefs will take you to a destiny, which is always going to be lesser than your optimum. Faith will take you to a fate, what you optimally could be. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So we're not shooting for this. When you see this word, run. That's not what you're shooting for. It's a lesser future based on free choice, based on lower want, need, and fear programming. Do you understand? I want you to move into what I call not manifesting, but I want to teach you how to unfold or unscroll optimum conditions for you at all times in every present moment by knowing how to adapt to that kind of programming. Okay? And it's through this function. But faith is a funny word. People don't really know what it means. They think it's having faith in God, that God's going to do all this for you. No, you're to do it Not some entity other than you doing it for you. You're to do it. You. Stop being lazy. You have to make the change of mind. You're the one that has to re-scroll and retell stories in your brain in a different way. Does that make sense? You have to choose to stop choosing. I know that sounds funny, right? Choose to stop choosing. And so how do we do this? So a lot of you have in our amygdalas and even in our synapses that are like heat pile, we have a lot of beliefs that are untrue. And so you need to start questioning your beliefs. You already probably have done some of this. Like if you don't have money, you probably have done a lot of the creating money. What are your beliefs about money? What did you get from your parents to believe about money? Or if you believe that you can't be loved and you meet all the most rotten people in the whole world and they always poop all over you and betray you and best friends betray you and you have this big betray, you play victim like a crazy person, right? I'm a victim. And by the way, it's nicer as we get older. It's harder to tell when we're younger. But as we get older, you get a lot of little data points. And when you finally keep saying, it's them, 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 it keeps happening to me, guess who it is?
It's you.
Right here, right? So we need to make sure we recognize that nothing happens to you that is out of sync with your mind and what it's set on, what you've tuned in. Does that make sense? So if something happens to you in the periphery you don't like, it's time for you to reassimilate and understand things here. So when we start to understand the Bible as a concept of a singular consciousness, instead of all the characters and people playing in, when you start to understand it that way, then you'll see males be the logic side, and you'll see females be the feeling side, and it's just saying that all your emotions have to be streamed through the logic side to bring reason to all things before you can trust your feelings again to be intuitive. That's why Jesus came later in the functions. We have to ascribe to our logic and our reason first, and then we can bring back on the feelings and walk on water. And so, and that's when we can bring our feeling pile back on. So I'll explain that in a minute and how that all goes together. And so all the people freaking out about homosexuality in the Bible and all this stuff, I'll tell you this, if you're bringing it to a singular system, a male-minded person, which means somebody that is anal and doesn't have this going for them, if they get with somebody else that is male-minded, I don't care what their junk is down here. If an anal person gets with another anal person, who's going to learn compassion in that equation? No one. Doesn't work. And so when it's talking about homosexuality in the Bible, maybe that was true back then, it was because it was on lower functioning, but today it's talking about what's happening up here. And so if you get two very, very passionate, but I don't have any logic, very emotional people together, they end up in homicide and suicide situations, and you see them on Snapped, right? And that's because they don't have any logic streaming. So when you get a feeler with a feeler, that's a dangerous equation too. And so making sure you understand that it's not about this stuff getting together, it's about this stuff getting together. Does that make sense now? Okay, so whenever people are like freaking out about all the biblical stuff and gay marriage and all that stuff that's going on out there, I'm just like, oh, please, can we just bring it up a few notches? Make sense? And so if we start understanding it from that capacity, then you'll recognize that you have to have somewhat of an opposite in order for you to finally learn your system. And then we call those people soulmates, not twin flames. Twin flames are a completely different thing. Soulmates are those, I call them fluffers, it's a naughty term, but I call soulmates the fluffers to help you learn yourself enough to be able to honor a twin flame relationship without making it go away. Does that make sense? One more thing to say. In a marriage, I'm going to say this anyway. I normally wouldn't go here, I got to get going, but you guys have heard this term, right? What do they call that? 666. Mark of the beast. What does that mean? Ancients used to draw a picture like this, right? You see that everywhere. Aborigines, the Dogon, the Hopi. Give me some more. Anybody know what some other? So what this is the amygdala. We're going to talk about the amygdalas in a second. So the 666 in this is, what is it that's still caught within you that you haven't understood yet? And we need to descend into hell and go into our amygdala function. I'm going to tell you how this works. We need to resurrect the information, the data that's in there. We need to face it. We need to transfigure it through the Holy Trinity, meaning I'm going to look at it from my inner child self, my present self, and my optimum self that's coming into being from all three perspectives simultaneously, which is what clips it and puts it back with a synaptic group so it no longer is harbored in this receptacle that allows it to keep coming back into your experience as an experience. Does that make sense to you? And so we have to face the beast. That's why if you go read in Revelation, and that's what we're decoding right now in Revelation in our quantum class, is when you face the beast, it means that you get to wear robes of red. It means you're going to feel alive again. You're going to be this woman, this feeler with red on, looking at things from a whole different perspective and be able to ride that beast instead of letting it ride you. Does that make sense? Everybody thinks it's some horror story or something like that, and it's totally something different. Okay. So anyway, those of you that are interested in my quantum Bible class, come, because we'll totally tear it up and make it so much more sense out of it that suddenly you'll realize, oh, it is all truths. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because a lot of churches taught it in a literal sense.
Amen.
Okay. And the whole room starts shaking. All right. So back to our talk. So the amygdala function. So this is how I came into this information. So I was raised by my father during my high school years. He was very, very wayward with his form. He was a sociopath. He used to light cats on fire. I mean, crazy stuff. And growing up with him was tough. And then he got divorced and married a different. He cheated on my mom thousands of times. So she finally left him. Then he got with my stepmom. And when he got with my stepmom, she was more military, and so he had to honor her more. And it was kind of interesting. And so they started going to church, and then he was born again. And when somebody's born again with a whole lot of bad habits, a lot of stuff gets done in the name of God to you. Right? So I had a very bad taste in my mouth for God or Jesus or church. I just didn't like it. So when I left home, half my family was killed by a drunk driver, and I had precog that it was going to happen. And when that happened, I suddenly realized I had mediumship abilities, and I had all these other things I could do, not to mention having the precog that it could happen. So I've had a lot of experience with knowing things ahead of time because that was my nature of my survival as a kid. So when... sorry, I got distracted. Totally got distracted. Hang on. So, what was I saying? Darn.
Stepmom.
Stepmom.
You're growing
Oh,
up.
Dad,
How
I know.
everything started.
Oh, I became a spiritual slut. So I started to go around to all the different religions. I was a toast. I tried out this one, and I would fully immerse myself like I really believed it. And I would get some responses and some cool things that would happen, but it would always be kind of, it would water away, right? I was like, okay, no, that's not it. And then I kept jumping, and law of attraction was the closest thing I saw to fruitfulness, and because I could manifest things, and I was so good at it, because when I focus on something, I make things happen in a second. Now, is it optimum? No. But could I make it happen? Yes. Like this, right? Sometimes to my own detriment. Thank God I have ADD, though, because none of my addictions have killed me, because I get bored with them, and I move on to the next addiction. And I'll tell you right now, I keep that any kind of day. But my dad, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little tired and distracted. So my dad, oh, crap, why was I telling that story?
He was a born-again Christian.
Oh, and so I've been teaching manifestation and law of attraction techniques very well to people for a long time because I was definitely at a different stage of my growth. And it wasn't until about 3 years ago that I came full circle and understood the Bible in the way that I know it now. And it was with this one little story. I'm going to tell this one little story because this is what's going to help you. It became the Rosetta Stone for understanding consciousness, quantum mechanics, and moving up to yet another level of consciousness beyond the manifestation stage. And so I was teaching a group just much like you over at the Living Well Center. And I was teaching a manifestation, and all of a sudden, everything I'm teaching you tonight with this stuff that I'm going to teach you all came out in one session. And it was not too long after I met Alicia, right? And in fact, because I wasn't teaching this when you came to my very first demonstration, was I? So what happened was this Bible story kept coming into my head, and I felt like I was possessed by the Bible, and I was really upset about it because I really didn't like how religion was put upon me as a kid. And it made me hate my body, it made me feel fearful, it made me all these things. And this Bible story kept coming up to me. And it wasn't a normal Bible story that you hear everywhere. It was a Bible story where Christ goes into the temple. And Christ gets so angry in the temple. Does anybody remember why?
Yeah, they were selling.
They were money changers in the temple. And so this story kept coming to mind, and I remember liking this story as a kid because Christ got angry. My dad used to always say, Christ wouldn't like it if you got angry. I'm like, dude, you don't read your fucking Bible. Because Christ got angry, right? I said the F word. I did it. I said the F word. Okay. They all miss my F word. Everybody's used to my F word. Okay. Because I'm colorful like that.
You said it.
I know, but they didn't hear me, so they had to clap. So, we'll just pretend it's the first time. All right, so,
It's on the record.
and I know it is on record. Okay,
Yay.
stop that now. All right, so Christ goes into the temple. He gets really angry because there's money changers in the temple. He feels like it's sacrilegious, right? That's not what the temple is for. And then he does what?
Those are tables.
He turns those tables over. He doesn't want it in there. He wants them out of there for good. So this Bible story keeps coming to me, and I'm thinking, gosh, okay, so I'm supposed to focus on anger, and I'm thinking about all these levels of and this is when this whole thing came out of me that I can teach more in depth in another class if you like. And it suddenly dawns on me, holy cow, temple. Because I graduated with my master's, right, in counseling psychology, and I've read like 400 books when I was during my drug phases. I read like 400 books on quantum mechanics and string theory and neuroscience and all these different things and all the mystical things, the Book of Hero, just tons of stuff. And here's this story, and it suddenly resonates that the temple is like the temporal lobe region of our brain. And then I realized he wanted people to be sacrificing things on the altar. That's what they used to do in Jewish times, right? And so I'm like, the altar's in the temple, and then I realized the amygdalas were our altar. And then I suddenly realized, oh, okay, he doesn't want money changing going on there. What girls typically, and so I'm going to be stereotypical for saying, girls usually are wondering who loves me enough. And guys are like, how much money can I make, right? This is how we do this, right? And so if that's what's on your mind all the time, you're constantly keeping ledgers in there. You're keeping scales in this temporal lobe region of who loves me enough, who doesn't love me enough, who did this for me, who didn't do it for this, how much money do they owe me, how much blah, 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 right? And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, and then I realized it hit me, that the amygdala functions that we're taught about, that house our PTSD, every time you went into fight or flight or resilience as a child, that's what made you resilient. Every time you went into fight or flight functioning, you'd freeze up, and the amygdala function opens up and swallows whatever code and all the peripheral collateral information and houses it in this vault and keeps it in there. And then it's going to swallow more information the next time it comes around the bend, and more information in it. It's like a black hole. It keeps taking more and more data in it. And the more and more data that's in here in your no-likey pile, the more bitter you get, the more pissed off you get, the more bipolar you're going to get. Sound familiar? And so when this place gets full, stuff starts not working in our bodies, stuff doesn't work out here, it's like crazy stuff happens, right? And so it dawned on me in the middle of the story that every time information gets caught in here, we also release a whole bunch of chemical chain reactions in our systems that make us feel imbalanced, these ledgers. Because when they did money changing in the temple, they had scales to measure this for that and that for this. And I realized, holy cow, that we have emotional imbalances because this for that and that for this going on in there. Neither a bar or lender B, we're supposed to not have these scales, these ledgers going on, judgments going on. Last judgment is a real thing, actually. You know, all the people running around with those signs, right? End of the world, right? Last judgment is upon you. But it's true. But what is last judgment? I'm going to explain that tonight because it has nothing to do with the fire and brimstone concepts. But understanding that you keep creating valuation systems in here, in your pineal gland, in your temporal lobe. So, what happens when you are having these imbalances in you is that you have chemical functions that become imbalanced, and then you have a lower vibe, and even more stuff happens to you, and even more stuff happens to you, right?
Would you say that that would be like an expectation evaluation system?
Yeah, to have expectations of others, right. Yeah. And so we want to bring it to 0 point. Good point. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get all of the valuation systems out of here so we have no expectations put upon others, and they won't put expectations on us so that we can truly live and hear by a different course, right? So love is exactly the way it sounds in tennis. What does love stand for in tennis? 0. 0 point. To have 0 expectations of another and have them have no expectations of you, of how you must perform in order for them to feel important, in order for them to feel loved, because the love is supposed to come from within. And once you have it within, you attract it to you all over the place. Correct? Can't love another unless you love yourself? You've heard that 1,000 times. Okay, so now let's play with the amygdala even more. All right, so here's little Tommy. Tommy is 3 years old, and his left and right hemisphere, when you're a little kid, 0 to 3 years old, roughly, your left and right hemispheres are right on top of each other. That's why you have a soft crown. And it's ready to have its first shame programming. That is how we wake up. We all go through the fall of man around 0 to 3, in each incarnation, if you believe that. And so between 0 and 3, though, Tommy is the center of his universe. Right? Didn't we used to think the earth was the center of the universe? Right? And so Tommy thinks he's the center of the universe and out of the mouth of babes, because if he poops, if he farts, if he laughs, if he does something funny, everybody's paying attention. Would you agree? And then there's going to come a day either when his little sister is born or when he's shamed in front of his his most favorite person, that suddenly he realizes he's not the center of attention anymore, and the fall comes. And when that happens, they suddenly separate themselves, and that's when the left and right hemispheres no longer agree. Does that get you? And that's when they get separated from God. So let's go through a little story so you can understand first judgment, because how do you get to last judgment if you can't even understand what you're hunting for and how things get crafted into your reality if you don't understand how you attract things to you? So here's little Tommy. He's 3 years old, happy little kid, really loves his grandma. Grandma really loves him, but she lives kind of far away. She only comes to visit 3 or 4 times a year. So being 2.5, 3 years old, Mom's probably very excited about her mom's visit too. And Tommy's the first grandchild. And so when Mom's trying to get ready for her mother's visit, she's cleaning like a crazy person, would you say? Shopping, getting the groceries together, all that kinds of stuff. And so little Tommy, what do you think he's doing while she's trying to do all this cleaning?
Getting in the way.
Huh? He's getting in the way. What is he doing? He's probably making messes. Lots and lots of messes. So Mom's got to get real clever. She's got to put Tommy, she's going to say, gosh, how can I fix this? Oh, I know. I'll have Tommy make my mom a present, a picture. I'll put him at the table and he can color and I can finish my work. So she puts him at the table. He colors a beautiful picture. And that will look beautiful to Grandma, but what's really on this picture? Scribbles? Okay, thank you. And so here's little Tommy. He's scribbled this beautiful picture for Grandma, and the super shuttle drops her off. Ding dong. The doorbell rings, and he's so excited. He grabs his paper, and he runs to the front door to give her present, and he gives it to her, and she grabs it, and she goes, oh, Tommy, for me. And she looks at it, and she says, it is so beautiful. Oh, my goodness. You know, you're a good artist. And she's using that high-pitched, weird, encouraging voice that we all do when the kids are little, right? We're all very inauthentic with the little ones, right? Drives me nuts, right? And so when he receives his compliment, he really receives his compliment. Because when he is told that he is a wonderful artist, that he's a good artist, what is his response before the fall of man happens to him?
Yes, I am.
I know, I am, he owns that shit. Wouldn't it be great if somebody came up to you and gave you a compliment, you could say, yeah, I am. Wouldn't that be great? Isn't that what's wrong with the world, that you don't get to feel damn good about yourself? Do you think it might be because you learned your manners at 3? Maybe. You think I'm kidding. Watch this. That doesn't mean don't use your manners. Well, I use less manners than others, but it makes me fun to talk to. So here's little Tommy. This was a wonderful experience. So when he says I know, because he's just learning language, are we gonna discourage him by saying, Tommy, you don't say that? Do we do that when they're little? No, like when little kids go, asshole, we all laugh and giggle because we know they're mimicking. It's our fault. Right? It's funny. So when he says I know, he gets away with it. And everybody thinks it's great. Oh, that's so cute. Right? And it's a win-win-win solution. So this win-win solution gets data banked. 3 months from now, Grandma's coming to visit again. Do you think Mom's going to pull this one out of her drawer so that she can clean up again for Grandma? Heck yes, this is what we do. We create ritualized experiences so we can get shit done. So he's sitting at the table again, coloring his next masterpiece, scribbling his next masterpiece. And Grandma comes to the door again, and the same situation. She gets her picture in that weird, disgusting voice that we use. Ah, it's so beautiful. right? And she goes, you're such a good artist. And he says, I know. And it's so cute, again. And this is becoming a staged ritual. She visits again 3 months later, same thing. 3 months later again, same thing. 3 months later again, same thing. You get my drift? 2 more times. Here's summertime. Tommy is now 5 years old. Now he's not just learning language anymore. Mom's thinking about where he's going to be going in autumn. Where is he going to be going at 5 years old in the autumn? Kindergarten. Yes. We could even call it the fall. He's going to go where? At 5? Kindergarten. Where'd you go to school?
3 years of kindergarten.
Oh, got it. My daughter did that too. So, in kindergarten, right, she has things to prepare him for. What is she going to prepare him for? What? Manners. Why do we teach our kids manners at 5 years old? Because we might get damn judged. And we don't want them to get judged, right? But really, it's about I don't want to get judged as the mom. So we start teaching them manners. And so, but here we got this cognitive dissonance happening. He's got this event that is ritualized that he's always allowed to do, but now he's in a different developmental stage where mom's teaching him manners. So Tommy is actually creating a true masterpiece sitting at the table because he's been so encouraged 7 times with all the excitement. Do you think he's been coloring in between visits because it's just fun and it reminds him of something wonderful because he thinks he's great at it? You bet your buns. So he's sitting at that table and he's drawing something that is beyond his years because he's practiced so much and because he believes it. He believes it. So he's destined to be this wonderful picture on the table. So he's drawing this beautiful, beyond his years picture, which would truly be impressive to anyone. And the doorbell rings, ding dong, and he runs to the door as normal, and she gets the picture, and things are different this time. Don't let me forget to give that to you. Things are different this time. She grabs it, and she's not using that ridiculous high-pitched voice. She's actually authentic. She grabs it, and she starts with the ridiculous voice, right? Oh, whoa. That is really good, Tommy. Did you really draw this by yourself? Wow. And her daughter walks in the room and she goes, did you see what he's done? This is really good. And even mom kind of looks at it like, wow. And she looks at him and she goes, you really have become a good artist. You're very good at artistry. And you know what he responds with? His ritualized response, which was, I know. Except mom is right there. She's not pleased. Tommy, we just had this talk this morning. How many times do I have to tell you? You say thank you when you get a compliment. Now, what should you be saying to grandma right now? And all he's like, he's in fight or flight. He's in amygdala opening mode, which is this little apparatus in our brains. And this is on an involuntary response, right? Nobody's made this happen. He's not choosing to make this happen. This is involuntary. In fact, we were given this in our Genesis time frame. I'll explain. And so in this moment, he goes, he doesn't know what to do. And she goes, young man, she sees it as him being just disobedient. Young man, you say thank you to her right now or you're going to go to your room. Now, what is he guilty of? Doing the same thing that's been accepted 7 other times. Mom's not gluing in at all, right? So he's going to do one of 2 things. He's either the Cain or the Abel system. He's either the people pleaser or the rebel. First and second children, always one becomes this one becomes that one. That's how it works. It's true. And so here's little Tommy. If he's the people pleaser program, he's going to do what he's told, but he's going to be very deflated doing it. Would you agree? He's going to go, thank you. He's not even going to look Grandma in the eye again. He's going to go to his room. Maybe take his paper with him. Right? If he's the rebel program, Mom gave him a choice. He's going to get so mad. And he's going to grab his paper and he's going to go to his room instead. Slam the door. Now, he's not a teenager yet, so he's not going to slam the door and go behind there and pout or sulk or stew like teenagers will. What does he do when he goes through that door in either case? squirrel,
Mm-hmm.
shiny ball, he's going to immediately get distracted and forget this even happened. Would you agree? We call that resilience. Children that bounce back right away, we call that resilience. But what's really happening is that information got stuck in this receptacle, and some firewalls have gone off to make sure that information stays in there, because if Tommy goes through enough of these, he's not going to want to be here anymore. And there was a time period in human history where people weren't activating. They weren't moving past shame whatsoever. They would just run around and have sex all the time and drink, and make no progress as a human being. And this was back in the Genesis time. And so Noah, and this is what's interesting. So Noah's time period, right? There's this big flood. God's made a mistake. He's got to change his batch out. He pretends it's their fault, but it's really his fault. Wouldn't you say? It's his damn creation. I'm going to blame it on them. You've disappointed me. But really, he's upset at his program's not working right. So he takes Noah and the other 7, which is 8 people, which is a lot like our microcosmic stem cell 8. He puts them in the ark. He keeps all that code that's working and keep all those critters that are working too. I like all this code because I'm creating some game called Earth, right? And so he puts them over there, and he goes, okay, how can I make these humans advanced? And so he comes up with some solution set. He lets everything dry up. He brings Noah back into the equation, and he says, please stay with me, Noah, because Noah right now is pretty deflated himself. He just watched all these people die and all this effort, and now there's only 7 of them on. Can you imagine if you only had to be on an island with 8 people? Would you not want to blow your brains out? Okay, so then we have Noah there, and so God's like, please stay with me. We can do this. I fixed the problem, and I have a promise. I promise you I fixed the problem. Here's the covenant. And he gives him an image. What's the image he points to? The rainbow, which are your chakras, which means he gave us the amygdala function that's going to separate and put a lot of shame information for later, to deal with later in your system, but you have a place to read it and understand it and go back and retrieve it later when you're maturated enough to get it. See what I'm saying? So we were given chakras, lovely, a place to tuck all that bad shit away for later. It's like sweeping everything under the rug. That was in Genesis. I'm teaching you Revelation. Revelation is about the 7 trumpets will sound, which are the chakras, the 7 seals will break, and the 7 bowls will dump, which means everything that's caught within these things are going to be spilling into your reality. What used to be only in cycles of time is now going to be shit's going to be hitting the fan all at once at the end time. Is that where you are right now? Yeah. So what do? Well, all the rest of it's telling you how to decode this and what to do with it. And it's actually a little bit simpler than you think, but it's a little bit time constraining to do it. Okay?